One of the most anticipated films of the summer is The General's Daughter. Based on the 1992 best-selling book by Nelson DeMille, it examines the brutal murder of a female Army officer and the attempt to cover it up. It opens on June 18th, and here is the trailer.
Worse.
You'll ruin it all.
What's worse than rape? When you find that out, then you'll know everything, won't you?
This film has brought together some of the most respected, some of the most talented people in Hollywood. Joining me now, three of the film's stars. John Travolta, he portrays the officer in charge of the criminal investigation. Madeleine Stowe, who plays his partner. And Timothy Hutton, who portrays his friend and one of the prime suspects. I'm pleased to have all of them here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell me this story. What's it about?
It's the story about an investigator in a division of the Army, John plays.
This will be Mr. Bremer here on my right.
Mr. Brenner.
Paul Brenner, that's right.
And he's called in because the general's daughter, something has happened, and it has to be investigated. I play a provost marshal. Madeleine plays someone who's also from the criminal investigative division. They come in,
right,
and they want to get to the bottom of it. And in the process, they realize that there's a little bit more that they need to uncover and that everybody's hiding something. Nothing is as it appears, and everybody's living with a certain version of the truth.
And the victim's father,
yeah,
is a very admirable, famous, highly respected general.
Yes.
Hope to be president one day.
Hopes to might be on the ticket.
That's right.
What's interesting to me at first is the fact that they have somebody in the Army like the character you play. He has the capacity, the assignment, and the responsibility, and the jurisdiction to go wherever the evidence takes him.
Yeah. I think so. That's the DeMille, it's a DeMille character all the way, you know. He loves complex characters, and then I think the seed of this idea, this guy who has all this power, prompted him to write this too, you know.
Yeah.
It is an interesting idea to have power over almost anyone that you confront.
Yeah, who is he? What's he like? What this character that you play?
The reason I liked him, and I went back to the book because I needed to know more about him before I could commit to the piece, was he had many layers. He hero worshipped the general, but yet he's like many police that are cynical. So he has a wry sense of humor and a great ability to be undercover. And also when he confronts the James Woods character, he can equally compete with him on an intellectual level. So I love playing these multiple layers of a character. So he's all that and more.
When they get you, they know they can go to the bank and get the back and all the stuff that they need. You've got very good screenwriters writing on this. You've got a good director coming off of Con Air, and he was hot. But now they've got a star who's going to commit to it. When you commit to this, what do you ask for other than whatever they're going to pay you?
I ask for approval of the script,
right,
and approval of casting.
Approval of casting. You're responsible. You wanted Madeleine.
Yes, I did, and I wanted Timmy.
And Timmy, I'm coming to that first, Madeleine. The character you play is another investigator, which becomes, you've had a relationship.
Yeah, a former paramour, really, and she's been quite duplicitous with him in the past, and I think they both broke one another's hearts, but don't want to admit it. Yeah. So a lot of this film has scenes between us where we're playing very much a cat and mouse game, and it's really quite adolescent, I think, between them. It's like who's going to lay whose heart on the line first, I think.
Yeah. And your character?
I play Billy Kent, and I am the provost marshal, which is basically chief of police on this military base, head of the MPs. And I like the character very much because anytime you get to play a character who, all in the same moment in a scene, is playing the past, playing the present, and playing what might happen in the future based on what information I'm giving or not giving. And all of those three things are at odds with each other. And he's, you know, cracking down and coming closer and closer. Because I guess part of what I do in the film is give access to some of the other soldiers and aid in the investigation for these two.
Yeah, who's not here is Jimmy Woods, and his character is?
Head of PSYOPs, Psychological Division.
And best friends with the general's daughter.
Yes.
Whatever that will mean to you eventually.
I know, I understand the storyline. But the general's daughter, because the general's daughter's obviously been killed, and there's a lot of psychological stuff
and she's
there
part of PSYOPs
about her.
too.
And she's part of, and she was
Yes.
there too.
And she had tremendous control over many people on the space.
But you did this because you liked, they said to you the script. Now, the story is Michael Douglas had passed for whatever reason.
Right.
You don't care who's passed because if you like the script, it's good for you.
Right.
And
And
everybody's talking about this.
And the Golden script was excellent. However, it wasn't fully fleshed out with the character. So I went back to the book, as I did with Get Shorty, and asked if they could, fill out the characters. Then perhaps I would do it. So they agreed to allow me to sit with the writers and go through, refer to the book, and we spent days, maybe a full 12-hour day, 5 days in a row, making sure all the loopholes were there were no holes in the script. The characters had the full breadth of their behavior from the book, and as we were doing the film, we all referred to the book when we could to make sure the humor was there and whatever we needed to complete the full picture.
Life on a military base has its own. It's like it's a contained world.
Yes.
Yeah, own society.
Yeah, they have their own society and their own hierarchy, and the general is king.
Yeah.
Right.
And because in the military everybody follows orders, and therefore the general rules.
But this could be a giant law firm, another wing of the government. It could be a religious institution. This story really could take place anywhere. It's an interesting backdrop for it. But any place that has its own set of rules doesn't take kindly to outside investigators coming in. They prefer to handle it themselves.
All right, take a look at this. This is where you tell Paul Brenner, John, and Madeleine, who plays Sarah Sunhill, that they cannot search Captain Campbell's house without a warrant. Captain Campbell being the daughter who has been killed. Here it is. Roll tape.
Of course. I suggest you notify them right away.
Details! I can't hear! Who said,
How long has this been made? Not the movie itself, but how long has this been there as a property waiting to be made into a movie? Do you know?
4 years, I think, the producer was working on it. Wasn't that about right? 4 years?
Yeah.
Shot it in Savannah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Your neck of the woods.
Yeah, down in my part of the country, yeah. In the southern part of heaven, as we say. For you, with this group of people, I mean, what's the experience for an actress, for an actor or an actress? What are you looking for other than giving, when you make a movie like this that everybody's paying attention to? Is it just how do I make the best performance, or is it more?
Well, there are always all kinds of variables when you make a film. I think that when a film is really, really working, my experience has always been that there is yourself, the actors you're dealing with, and if I feel the presence of the director or the camera person, all that, in the scene with us, it's almost though it energetically becomes something else and lifts it to another step. When I feel that happening, that's when it's magic, and I'm most interested in who I'm engaged with on screen, always, developing that third relationship almost with that person. It's not so much about for emotionally right. If I can't exist with another person on camera, then it's usually a really boring experience.
You mean you don't want to accept the role unless there's some relationship that's interesting to you?
If it's interesting on paper, and then if it happens, if the chemistry is right. I mean, I think John and I had a really, really easy experience with one another. I mean, I got to work a little bit with Tim, but our relationship was, it went past the point of our knowing each other socially, because we don't at all. But something happened on camera where there was a thing where you felt you were in that reality at that moment, and that's when it works. And those are always the things that you remember. Otherwise, to me, it's really not worthwhile doing a film. And I sentimentalize those experiences.
Madeleine has this quality that I was so relieved when you said yes and we offered it to you, because Madeleine has this effortless ability to just be innately strong. I mean, there's a gravity and a depth that I always compare Madeleine to Meryl Streep, because you just put Meryl in a role, and her beingness is
the deepness that comes through
right there. And the same thing with Madeleine. And I thought, okay, I don't have to work at this rapport at all. Yeah. It's there, and we didn't. We just existed together on screen.
Now, all of you are working for a director you never worked for, right?
Yes.
No, he's only made what? Con Air was that first big film.
That's it.
Yeah.
But Nicky Cage had actually really suggested Simon.
To me,
you,
that's
I
right.
To you,
think.
is that Nick
Yeah.
After
Cage
we
called
did
you?
Face Off, and I promised him a great experience with John Woo. And then I said, they want me to do this picture of Simon West. What do you think? He said, I promise you a great experience with Simon.
In other words, it'll be as good as John Woo was for me in Face Off.
And he made that, and of course, you know, I was a little more skeptical until we're about halfway through, and then I realized he knew exactly what he was doing.
Halfway through, you were skeptical?
No, I mean until, because I didn't.
Simon's hard to read.
Yeah.
He is. I think he's very kind of an enigmatic guy in a lot of ways, and he's very, very hard to read. Was that your experience with him? Because
Yeah, very hard.
it's sort of what is going on. He reminds me of Alfred Hitchcock in a strange way, but he's actually there is no hidden agenda. He's very.
What you see is what you get.
That is, but you're just looking for something else.
Well, he knows how to grab the action, doesn't he?
He knows how to grab the
Molly's
action,
stylist, yeah.
but he also knows how to make the camera another character in the room, so that you're a bit of a voyeur watching.
In terms of the way it moves and where it...
Yeah, it might sneak around a door as if it's you know.
Which a
And
good filmmaker does, and he is that.
Yeah. The impression was that you had sort of withdrew a little bit from Hollywood to go back to Texas and family, I guess, right? And so what brings you, did you like this so much, or this was such a big opportunity, or what was it that got you?
Well, you know, they're all very
Or the
complicated.
call comes from Sir John here, and you say, okay.
Right. I guess I've never been what is traditionally called a Hollywood creature in the sense I never really socialized much. And I think that's a very important part of the business. And it's never been really my forte. I was always very withdrawn. And I went to Texas for a long time. I've been living on a ranch, and I had a child, and she's going to turn 3 at the end of this month. And it does things to you. While I never said, oh gosh, I don't want to work, I certainly didn't feel the same way about it, and certainly had a lot of agitation about not working, to be really honest. I mean, that happened. But did I feel the same way I did?
Angst about not working.
Oh, God,
thinking
yes,
like,
yeah.
The world will pass me by
Oh,
while I'm
sure.
sitting there here teaching my
And I still
kid how
do.
to rope a cow.
Yeah, exactly. I still do, and from time to time. But I don't feel the same way I did about it a number of years ago, and I think it takes a lot of determination and drive and obsession to go at the clip that certainly I think that
Well, but there is, you know what there is about him, because I know him best. There is the sense that after this whole thing happened with Pulp Fiction, you really wanted to work a lot. I mean, you basically said to me, you've said this to me before, I just want to reach out for it now because, you know, and one after another, you've chosen one film after another. I mean, you've hardly stopped working.
That's true.
Since Pulp Fiction. Now, why is that?
Well, because the quality of projects were so...
For so long, they were so poor.
Well, yeah, and so when you know, you're used to getting 1 or 2 offers a year, and they're not very good, and you'd rather not work because they're not good. And then suddenly, you know, there's a 5-year run of excellent top A+ projects being thrown your way. You don't want to say no to them, and you don't want to say no to working with these wonderful artists. And
nobody loves
directors.
working. In my experience, nobody loves working. Anyone I've worked with
More than him.
that's really true.
You mean he works harder, or he does what?
He absolutely works harder.
Yeah.
But he also loves it.
He does.
And he gets everybody else working hard.
I only do it because I love it. It's not for any
No,
other
you don't need
reason.
money, and you don't need to see your face on the
I
screen.
don't want
You do
to miss an
what you like to do.
opportunity to do a great piece of work, you know.
Yeah. All right, here is a set this up. I don't need to set it up. This is where you want to help Brenner on this case, and so you make the case. Here it is. Roll tape.
Well, possible motives for murder are profit, revenge, jealousy, to conceal a crime, to avoid humiliation and disgrace, or plain old homicidal mania. Right there in the manual.
The most interesting thing about it that I know is that it is the surprises that come. I mean, no matter what you think you know as you're watching the movie, something will come along and surprise you.
But that's what made it a successful book. Is everybody who I know that's read it said they love the left turns and the surprises in the book, and that's tough to do in that genre. You know, this late in that genre. You know.
You think it's hard for someone who hasn't directed that many films to come work with you?
Yes.
Because?
I don't know. I have to think
Because
about
your
it.
reputation.
Well, what is my reputation?
Well, no, but you're a big movie
Oh, yeah,
star.
yes.
I mean, you know.
Well, what they find is
they got a
that-
lot invested in you.
Sure, and vice versa.
And vice versa. You got a lot invested in them.
Yes. However, they usually are thrilled at the end of it because I'm a pretty good guy to work with.
Yeah.
I'm mostly about the work, you know. So if they are too, they're not going to have a problem with me, and I'm not going to have a problem
If
with
they
them.
care about the end of the day, if they care about what we're putting on the screen.
That's what matters most
I
to
might
me.
add, you also eat well on a John Travolta movie.
What do you eat?
Oh,
Whatever you want. I mean,
that's right. That's a perk.
Yeah. You have any regrets? I'm changing the subject to you, Tim. Any regrets about where you are, or any? I mean, is this the best of times for you because of the kinds of things you can now do, where you earned an opportunity to do a whole lot of different characters?
Yeah, I mean, I feel lucky because I've been able to do this now for about 20 years and worked with some amazing people. And you know, as far as my life, I have this incredible 12-year-old son who's about to graduate the 6th grade. So I would say, yeah, these are pretty good times.
Yeah. He likes basketball or not?
Loves basketball. Loves basketball, loves astronomy, and you know, loves school.
Yeah. The great joy there is just you've got a kid, right?
I sure do.
How many? One, two?
I have one.
You have a three-year-old?
Almost 3, yes.
Is the great joy watching them grow and just seeing this sort of innate curiosity they have about all things around them?
Absolutely.
And
That's one of so many things that is a marvelous thing. How they affect you is amazing. You know, you become very vulnerable to them, and probably more vulnerable to them than they are to you in some ways, I think. Don't you think that?
You think?
Yeah. Oh, John and I would talk about it all the time, actually, and you talk about Noah, and it's just a wonderful thing. And I think for me, the thing I like most is just the constancy, you know, with which I've been able to be there in her life. That's been really, really important. I'll never look back and say, oh my God, you know, I was off doing. Yeah, no, it's there. And I can say that calmly.
All right, I want to see one more clip here. This is where you question Jimmy Woods about the murder of the general's daughter, Captain Campbell. Here it is.
So now, we both know we're smart guys. Do you think I'm involved in this?
One way or another, yes, I do.
Then wouldn't it behoove me to retain the services of an attorney? I know a good one.
2 problems there. First, the obvious. There are no good ones.
See, you know what I love about that? You said is your favorite scene, which I'll come to you in a moment. What I like about that, the best movies for me have at least some kind of dialogue like that, where there is a kind of joy of, of people communicating with each other and playing chess and doing all those things.
It's probably the scene that made me want to do the movie, because it's so cleverly written. That scene you just saw.
You read that and you said, man, I can see myself there.
It was a turning point. Yeah, it's so wonderful. It's such a joy to say those kinds of words when they're character-based like that.
Yeah. Why'd you like this scene?
Well, I love it. I mean, it may not be the most exciting or the biggest or any of those kind of things that audiences adore, but I think it's very cagey between John and Jimmy, and it's one of those kind of scenes I imagine if you're playing that every gesture another character makes, sort of what you do in response. Like, are you always aware of what your physical being is during that and what's really being said? It's really, really intriguing.
This scene that we just saw is, when I first read the script, I thought, okay, I really want to do this now. Because this
scene?
Absolutely, which I'm not...
You're not in?
No, but this story, it's a chess game.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to be a part of that. It's not on one track at all. There are many, many different things going on here.
The level of writing is so appreciated at that kind of point when you're reading.
But here's what I don't get. I never have gotten this. It is, it's like Bill Goldman written some great scripts. He's also a script doctor. It is this process of so many people getting their hands on scripts. So what ends up at the end is the best possible script, or a script that has lost all of its soul. Not about this case, but generally. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
I mean, you got two clear. First of all, you got a novel, Nelson DeMille, and then you got 2 screenwriters. One came in early, one came in later. Whose script is this?
Well, the stronger the storyline, the better chances you have are for anyone writing on it holding together. So I think what you've got is an unbeatable, unshakable story here that any good writer could make work, and not. And as soon as you get too far off the beaten track, you know, you just come back to what it was based on, which is the book. You know.
Sometimes it gets out of control. I worked on movies where there are writers hired to represent different characters.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have. You know, you have Mary writing for the Bill character, and you have this other screenwriter writing for this other character, and there's 6 different writers working at the same time, and pages come in, and everyone looks at them, and too much.
It's also going through a really peculiar stage too, in that so many of the scripts are becoming derivative of other stories, of other things that have worked, of other conventions that have worked, and that's a little bit of the scary thing. So about 2 or 3 times a year, you read a script that's just really tremendous, and you say, okay, I haven't seen this, and and this is fresh and new. And I'm wondering what it's about, if it's just a younger generation of writers who are growing up watching videos and movies, and that's what life experience has become to them. And in this particular instance, William Goldman certainly has a long history.
Yeah.
You know,
but also
think
different writers do different things better. Some are great at dialogue, some are great at character development, some are great at structure. Some can come in and look at a script and say, they've done great work, but what's missing is this.
Yeah.
It needs this. What's missing from me is this. Thank you, my friend.
You're
great
welcome.
to see you.
It's always great to see you.
Great, Tim. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Go, next. Madeleine, pleasure. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Strong, tough, hard-working, straight-talking. These were the qualities Americans saw when they watched John Wayne fill the big screen. And over a 50-year career, those qualities turned him into one of the great American icons. Known affectionately as Duke, he starred in over 175 films, and though they weren't all westerns, that is the genre with which he is forever associated. The image of him, high in the saddle with a gun in his hand, is one that became familiar to generation after generation of cinema goers the world over. Famously, John Wayne was not his real name, as he explains here in our interview from 1969.
My right name is Marion Michael Morrison, and the studio decided that it was not American enough for a boy who was going to play Breckenridge Coleman in The Big Trail back in 1929. So the studio heads were put together and they came up with the name John Wayne. But long before I had the name John Wayne, I was going to school in Glendale and I had a dog named Duke. And the dog would follow me as far as the fire station on the way to school in the morning and wait at the fire station for me to return in the evening. And the firemen all knew the dog's name, but they didn't know mine. So they called the dog Big Duke and me Little Duke. That was a few years ago.
What did you study at Glendale?
Well, at Glendale High School, it was just, in Glendale, it was just grammar school and high school.
And then at
I went to
college?
the University of Southern California. I took a pre-legal course.
Did you ever intend to be a lawyer?
Yes, I think I would have enjoyed the occupation, but while I was going to school, I was offered a job in the summer times working at the studios. I met Mr. John Ford, and I enjoyed working with him and watching him mold a scene and meld the people to the scene. And then I'd go back to school and look around at these kids, and I'd say, well, this kid's father is a lawyer. This kid's uncle is an established lawyer. And they're going into those offices, and one of them will take me in, and I'll be writing briefs in the back room for 10 or 15 years. And it didn't look quite as appealing or as exciting as pictures. So when I was offered the acting job, I accepted it, never realizing that it would end up a career, but thinking it might establish me so that I could get into the production and finally direct, which I wanted to do.
Why was it cowboy films in particular that interested you?
Well, it wasn't a case of what it interested me. It was a case of that which I fit in best. I was of 6'4", which is a fairly tall man at the time in pictures, and all the leading ladies are small, so I, you know, you're all bent over like this with those leading ladies. So I fit the background of Westerns better. And in those days they needed, you know, they didn't spend quite as much money on doubles and things as they do today, and they expected you to be rugged enough to do a little of this stuff. So I fit that category. So I guess that's why I got started in it.
Have you seen any of the films you made, those early films? Have you seen any of them recently?
I try not to see them.
Stagecoach is always considered the turning point in your career.
Yes,
Why?
it certainly was. Well, it was the first time that I was able to be a part of a picture in which the reaction became important. You know, they say action pictures and A pictures. But in these action pictures that we made earlier, You had to explain the story, tell where you were going, explain, you know, the heavies are going to Ice, so we'll cut across Red Gulch and meet them ahead of time. Then you'd ride out and you'd say, well, this is Red Gulch, and then they'd say, oh, there they come now. And you never had a reaction to any situation. It was just all action, and nobody has a chance to get much of their personality into a picture under those conditions. But in Stagecoach, the story was told with a camera rather than by the mouthing of the leading man.
You must be offered a lot of parts. What determines you in choosing a particular one?
Personal story, as a rule. Sometimes you're stuck, you know, and it's getting time for an assignment to come up, and you accept stories that are not completed. But as a rule, whenever that happens, you run into a mess. But I haven't learned my lesson completely yet. I still do it on occasion.
What parts would you downright refuse?
Anything mean and petty. I think I've established a character on the screen that may be rough, may be cruel, may have a different code than the average person, but it's never been mean or petty or small.
A film where Wayne had decided exactly which role he got was The Alamo, another epic western that he not only starred in alongside Richard Widmark and Lawrence Harvey, but produced and for the first time directed as well. In 1960, he was in the UK for its opening, and he spoke to Robert Robinson on the programme Picture Parade, starting with the subject of the movie's length.
Now, the film is itself about just over 3 hours long. Did it need to be this long?
Well, I felt that it needed to be that long. We wanted to develop each character, particularly the Travis character, who was not well known to audiences. Naturally, they've heard of Bowie and Crockett, and they've developed a picture of him. But in order to set Travis, we probably took longer than we
Travis was played by Lawrence Harvey.
By Lawrence Harvey, and we thought he was magnificent picture. Actually, now that we've seen Ben-Hur out in Spartacus and they're saying too long, too long, too long, perhaps we should have tempered the time, cut it down. Actually, I used my baby in the film, and I think I gave her a little too much footage. It's probably a little sentimental. And I had a sequence in which I wanted to set the tenor of feeling of the men at the end, and I had Parsons' death. But the parson was not too well known to the audience. So actually, I feel that maybe those two sequences we could have done without them, and we may cut them.
You produced and directed and took the leading part in the film.
Well, I took one of the leading parts in the film.
It looked like the leading part to me.
Well, actually, I think that Travis was the pivotal character. Travis was actually the man with the dedication, and he's the man who turned the other men into heroes. Most of the men came in as just healthy, rough, lusty men of the period, and
but they're always the more interesting, aren't they?
Oh, always.
But anyway, you had these three major responsibilities. Did they worry you?
Not until after I was about halfway through the picture. I'll tell you something, when you first start off, you're kind of a lamb, you know, on a thing like this. And I just assumed that I would have no troubles. About halfway through the picture, I realized that although I had known my crew for years and knew each personality, I hadn't known Mr. Harvey and I hadn't known Mr. Widmark, and whether or not we would chemically adjust to each other. And about halfway through, when everything was going well, and I realized how well it was going, I started thinking of what could have happened. And I spent a night shaking, I'll tell you.
You referred earlier to your small daughter. Did you find it difficult to direct her? To make her act, in a word?
Well,
because
actually, she was 3 years old, and you can't expect too much of a 3-year-old. And at about 4.5, they start to get bashful. She wasn't really bashful at that time, and she had enough reasoning power to remember a line. But I think I went overboard a little with the young lady. But that, I guess, is a father's prerogative.
Is it a difficult technique to act in front of cameras which you're also directing?
Well, actually, what we would do would be to come in and rehearse a scene and set the scene. Now, I have found that in lots of pictures where actors have something to do with the direction, that things become so pat, it loses its spontaneity. And you're very conscious of clean performances, but there's something that isn't realism, and there's something that isn't motion picture style. Because accidents lots of time make for good scenes in pictures. And when you're out there, you often think, oh, cut, because you figure something's gone wrong. But actually, I overcame that feeling, and a lot of scenes that I was worried about when we shot, when we look at them in rushes.
You let the accident stay in?
Always.
Now, I know that you are a protege of John Ford, the director. Did you have his assistance on this film?
Well, he is certainly my mentor, and I had all of his enthusiasm and his good wishes. He came down to visit us a couple of times on the sets, but he was very careful to stay in the background, realizing that these people, you know, it might affect their performance.
You have $1.5 million invested in this venture. Do you feel that that is a calculated risk?
Well, it was a calculated risk because of the medium. It requires spending a great deal more money to get it on the screen. I wish I could have made it for $100,000, you know, but it's just it was impossible to do this picture the way that I believed it should be done. Just cost that much money.
You've been at the top of your profession, Mr. Wayne, as an actor for about a quarter of a century, although that has a more historical ring than I mean it to have, 25 years. I don't wish to embarrass you, but can you tell me, quite apart from your capacity as an actor, what you think your appeal is?
Well, we are in the business of making motion pictures, and motion pictures allow action. And although top pictures, I believe, are stories of people and their reactions to situations. But once you have played a scene and put those reactions on the screen, then with our medium, a motion picture, you can pull back and show them scenery and break up monotony. And naturally, the field of outdoor pictures, which I have been in, lend itself to that medium. And as a consequence, probably people have come away pleased with the type of pictures that I have been in.
This is a very modest answer, Mr. Wayne, but
I didn't mean it modestly, but I really do think that that has a great effect.
Because you play tough guy parts in films, do you find that people in the street try and pick quarrels with you?
No, actually, the kind of tough parts that I've played have not been really aggressive toughies on the screen. When I first came into the business and had to wear real long hair for a lot of pioneer parts and was young, a few of the fellows tried to get into conversations with me that might have got them in trouble, but I managed to talk my way out most of the time.
It wasn't just the tough guy image that went everywhere with John Wayne. Over the years, he also became increasingly well known for his strong right-wing views and die-hard Republican politics. In the 1950s, he was a prominent supporter of the House Un-American Activities Committee and its efforts to remove communists from the film industry, something he discussed in a prickly encounter with Michael Parkinson in 1974.
Can I talk to you now about another much publicised aspect of your life, which is the sort of political views that you hold? I'd like to particularly ask you as well, because it's related to the film industry, about that period in your career in Hollywood when you were to the forefront of the people who were blacklisting the alleged communist members of
Well, that's not true statement.
Well,
we were not blacklisting.
Well, you were.
They were.
They
were. No, they were blacklisting. We didn't name anybody. We stayed completely out of it and said, "We are Americans." Anybody that wanted to join us, it was fine. We gave no names out to anybody at any time ever.
But when you look back at that now, John, at this space of time, I mean, are you proud of what happened in Hollywood at that time?
I think it was probably a very necessary thing at the time, because the radical liberals were going to take over our business. And you wouldn't have had any pictures like that then.
No, but seriously, though, I mean, were they in a position? I mean, the people who got kicked out of Hollywood, surely they were.
Who were kicked out?
Well, the people.
Now, wait a minute. Tell me who was kicked out.
Well, the people who left Hollywood. I mean, let's take for example, Carl Foreman.
Yeah, Carl Foreman.
I mean, was Dalton Trumbo?
Carlton Foreman, Dalton Trumbo.
Look what happened to Larry Parks.
Larry Parks admitted that he'd been a commie, and he went on working.
Well, he didn't work for some time. It had a very
well, he
adverse
hadn't
effect
worked
on
a
his
hell of a
career.
lot before that, had he?
Well, no, but I mean,
no.
But I mean, these aren't people, surely, are they, who you would expect to take over the industry?
Well, at the time, it seemed rather serious, and they were getting themselves into a position where they could control who would do the writing.
But isn't it right that people of all shades of opinion should be able to make movies, whether they be extreme right-wing or extreme left-wing?
Definitely. Any time that is their opinion, fine. But the trouble there was that they were spouting by rote somebody else's way of life. And that's all right for those fellows over there. That's the way they want to live, but we don't have to have it in our country.
No, well, you could say, of course, that...
That was our
point
of view.
Yes, but you could say that your point of view was reflecting the capitalist way of life, the American way of life.
Well, and I don't think that capitalist is such an unpopular word. You know, it's... in 200 years, we've taken a wilderness and build a factory that feeds the world, a farm that supplies the world, and a farm that feeds the world. And we've been doing our best to help everybody out that we can. So I think it's a pretty good way of living.
I read an interview that you gave, John, in which you said you objected to High Noon, to the film itself. You said it was un-American. I saw that film, and I guess a lot of people here in this audience will have seen that film, and I, for the life of me, can't see what's un-American about it.
Well, a whole city of people that have come across the plains and suffered all kinds of hardships are suddenly afraid to help out a sheriff because 3 men are coming into town that are tough. Now he goes to them and pleads them, and he goes into the church, and for some reason the women are all sitting on one side of the church and the men are sitting all on the other side of the church, and he pleads his case. And the men say, no, 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 and the women get up and say, you're yellow, you're cowards. I don't think that ever happens in the United States. Then at the end of the picture, he took the United States Marshal badge, threw it down, stepped on it, and walked off. I think those things are just a little bit un-American.
Really?
Yeah.
It's amazing, you see, because, I mean, I've seen that film not once, but, 4 or 5 times.
Well, you saw those things. Do they strike you as being
they strike me as being...
a true picture of the pioneer West?
No, but...
Or a picture of what Carl Foreman or somebody would like to give our children the impression?
No, but I mean, similarly, I'm sure that a lot of the movies that have been made about the West that you would approve of were similarly not a true picture of the West, nor of American society. I mean, I just took it to be, a dramatic exposition of something or another, certainly not a knock at the American way of life. And I'm amazed that, when I read it in the research, I thought, my God, it's an extraordinary ultra-reaction.
Well, actually, you must realize what was going on at that time in our business.
Well, I was going to ask...
There was a heated thing going on. They were a lot of people that were fine writers were weren't being used, and it was rough on them. And that's why I took up for that side, because Maury Riskin, who was a Pulitzer Prize winner, couldn't get a job because he didn't think exactly like these fellows. That's what started it, not us trying to throw them out.
Hmm. I suppose they could turn around conversely and say, though, of course, that then they couldn't get a job afterwards.
Well, they did pretty well.
Hmm. What about your, switching from that slightly to your political views about the modern political views about the modern scene in America? You, of course, you're a friend and supporter of President Nixon.
Yes.
Has in any way what's happened over the recent months altered your point of view about him?
No, it is brought to light what any thinking American must realize, and that is that politics in our country are not, shall we say, the most beautiful part of our American life. And instead of blaming politics for what's going on, the good and the bad politicians don't want to get mixed up in that. They're blaming leadership. Now, this man came in. First, he tried to keep in all the liberals and all the conservatives and tried to make one big family. Then the liberals started double-crossing him. So he turned to the others. Then they got high hat and started running affairs in a very high-handed fashion, which they shouldn't have done. It was wrong. It was a terrible abuse. But it wasn't the leadership of our country. It takes 3 years for a man to get his hands on the reins of government after he gets in there. And in the 4th year, he's in a campaign again. Now, what did this man do for us? He brought home 525,000 kids from Vietnam that 2 very popular presidents couldn't do, and he had to do it the unpopular way by making the decision to mine Haiphong Harbor. Then when they started playing pawns with our prisoners of war, he made the awesome decision of bombing Hanoi, and did, and brought them home. He opened up a détente with China, which the conservatives didn't like. I think he should be at the top of his glory right now, and instead of that, because of some political thing, they are belittling this man.
But the political, it's no more than a political thing, isn't it? It involves criminal acts.
Yes.
But, I mean, you can't have the President of the United States, or indeed the President of any country, to be seen in that kind of company, can you? Because if they do that...
I don't think that anybody has seen him in that kind of company. Well, that's true that the party did do some idiotic things. Mm. And they're going to jail for it. Mm. But I think it's pretty unfair to try to bring our president into it.
You don't think he should be impeached, then, as a lot of Americans do?
Well, to have an impeachment is probably the only way that they'll ever clear his name, because each day a new little piece of something comes out, they try to twist it around. Only by either a grand jury or by an impeachment can he be cleared up to where people will either believe in him or not believe in him.
You see, the latest poll shows that 8 out of 10 Americans now have lost confidence in Nixon. I mean, that's a very, very different situation than it was, 2 years ago, isn't it, or less?
Yeah, and if that's true, too, you know, it's...
Well, I mean, it's a poll published in America, the Harris poll. I mean, polls I know are not infallible, but they give a fair indication.
Right, right. I'm sure that there's a... It's quite a bit that way.
Are you bored of this conversation now?
No, I'm not. I'm not bored, but I do know that they've taken advantage of this man, and that he probably should have just stood up at the very beginning and said, anybody that's done something wrong will go to jail. He didn't do it soon enough. He believed in the fellows he had around him, in spite of the fact that when you have in a year's time, they mushroom up millions of dollars to do a campaign, you know there's going to be some misuse of funds, misuse of power, and it suddenly is all focused on this one man.
If his controversial views sometimes earned him a rough ride over here, in the eyes of many people back home, they would help to consolidate his image as a hero, something explored in a program called The Great American Picture Star.
Chicago in the summer of 1976. Like many American cities in the year of the bicentennial, the people are looking for homegrown heroes to honor. In the City Hall, they confer their freedom on an actor who perhaps more than most portrays the ideal American, John Wayne. For the town hall office workers, it's an opportunity to come face to face with a Hollywood legend. For Mayor Richard Daley, it's a chance to honor a man whose view of America is close to his own.
We admire him because he's a great American, one of the outstanding men in this country that's constantly talking about our country and its people, and reassuring in the bicentennial year that we do live in a great land, and there's nothing like it any place in the world, and we all should get together and start boosting it instead of tearing it down. So, John, on behalf of the people of Chicago, and by virtue of my authority as mayor, I would like to present you this medallion of merit on the visit to our city and make you an honorary citizen, and I know you'll come back in the next election and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
In America, with no royalty, and after Watergate, less of a regard for politicians, people need someone to hero worship. Hollywood has traditionally filled the gap.
That is true. You're the greatest. And you're a real American, and what could be better?
Thank you.
John, wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. It's great being here.
The alumni of the University of Notre Dame, an institution renowned throughout America for its sporting prowess, heap even further honors on the great American.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is truly a great honor to present this award to Duke Wayne tonight, who is no doubt the most popular and respected movie actor of all time.
He's been made Entertainer of the Year, a greatly sought-after award. Bob Hope was the 1975 recipient. But not everywhere is the prophet treated with such honor, notably when he braved the winter snows and snowballs of Harvard Yard in Boston to field questions from a less respectful university. To his credit, he gave as good as he got. The students came to jeer and stayed to cheer.
How do you feel about students smoking LSD?
I'm just happy that you all weren't here 200 years ago. They never got that tea into the harbor.
Is it true that your toupee is real mohair?
Oh, sure, that's real hair. Not mine, but real hair.
What they say about you, Duke, is still a man.
Do you look at yourself as the fulfillment of the American dream?
I don't look at myself any more than I have to, friend.
Nearly all of his contemporaries have either retired or died, but even a brush with death in 1964, when he contracted lung cancer, couldn't stop Wayne. After the operation, he immediately threw himself into an arduous film. And now he is in his 70th year, dogged by ill health, but still in the saddle. This summer in Burbank Studios in California, Wayne was to be found putting the final touches to yet another cowboy movie, The Shootist. It's the final day's shooting. The director is Don Siegel, well known for films like The Killers and Dirty Harry. On the set, Wayne is the professional's professional, word-perfect himself, and generous to any fellow actor who may have difficulty sharing a scene with him.
Well, what's your proposition?
Well, I'm prepared to offer you Bombing by the most modern methods, by the most scientific methods. Bronze coffin, guaranteed good for a century, regardless of the climatic or geological conditions. Geological conditions. My best hearse. Oh shit, this is a lunch.
That's all right.
Lunch, you know?
That's all right. That's okay. Take your time.
It was on a backlot set like this 50 years ago that Wayne and his football teammate first found work.
So Don Williams and I had put on the swing gang, which is the fellas that bring in the furniture so that the set decorator can say, put it there and put it there and put it there. And I stayed at that for a while, and then when Ford needed somebody to come herd the geese on his set, they sent me over there. And from then on, I worked in the property department and with Pappy Ford on his pictures.
Do you feel more at home when you're doing a Western than on any other sort of picture?
No, you feel at home. You feel when you have a good personal story and you feel everything fits together, then's when you're relaxed. Otherwise, you know, it's really a torture to work in a picture that you feel isn't going to be good and that you're a pawn in somebody's hand doing this thing. But I think this is going to be a good one.
Unlike the younger superstars who feel they don't owe their public any more than their performances, Wayne is aware of who ultimately pays his salary and is unfailingly gracious to guests on the set.
Yeah, well, you know, I felt so lousy this whole picture. It was only day before yesterday I felt good. But it wasn't just on this picture. I just had a lousy year as far as housing.
Well, let's hope from here on out.
Boy, I'm telling you, I feel great now.
Yeah.
When you wake up, doesn't matter if the sun's shining or anything, if you feel good.
Yeah, feel good.
In the film, Wayne plays an aging gunfighter who's dying of cancer. He's summoned an undertaker to make his own funeral preparations.
You're gonna lay me out for the public to gawp at 50 cents a head, children 10. And when the curiosity peters out, you're gonna stuff me in a gunny sack and stick me in a hole someplace and hustle to the bank with the loot.
Mr. Books, I assure you.
No, have you got a pencil and paper?
The picture ends with Wayne's death. A bloody, but a tasteful death.
Yeah. How do you like the red buttonholes?
Oh, yeah. I remember him, red button.
The whole idea of our business is illusion. And they're getting away from that now. Putting electric squibs in livers and blowing them up in slow motion and having blood all over everything. I mean, it's not that there's more violence in pictures today. It's that it's done with such bad taste that people turn their stomachs, not their emotional insides are affected. It turns their stomach. I just don't want to play anything petty or small or mean. I don't mind being rough and tough and cruel, but in a big way, no little petty things. I like a good personal story. I don't care whether it's armchair or stand on top of a building or jumping off of it. If they jump off it, I don't do it anyway.
Indeed, his stand-in has already performed his dying fall. Although Don Siegel may be the director, Wayne makes sure that the camera captures his own demise with dignity.
Shooting up his nose. I'm gonna make goddamn sure that you're not shooting up my nose. I mean, I can look at him right here, and you're not shooting up my nose. But if you put him around over here and I'm looking at him, it's goddamn photographically.
You want to put the bullets in?
Yeah. Don, Tom?
Yes.
You're right on his waist? Might see the belt?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
But you're gonna shoot just up my nostrils when you Okay.
Eventually, Wayne expires to his own satisfaction, and the movie's over. The producers throw a party for the cast and crew. Some of the stars, like James Stewart, return for a farewell drink, but the Duke has gone. Exhausted at the end of the picture, he escapes to the only place in the world where he can really relax. his boat, the Wild Goose, a converted minesweeper. Since before the war, he's been coming here, to the Pacific coast of Mexico.
You know, when I step aboard this thing, I yawn. I'm just completely relaxed the minute I step aboard. I don't have to dress up or be smiling or shaking hands, or if I'm having any trouble with any of my family, I don't have to be sweet about it because there's a lot of people around. I can be a human being, and we're not worried about an image. Of course, I haven't had that much of an image where I have to worry about it anyway. And luckily, I like people, so I don't mind going ashore. You notice that quiet little sleepy town, they don't bother you too much, particularly in Mexico. They're very respectful of another man's dignity.
There's some of the family aboard. Which ones are they?
Well, Ethan, who is 14, Marisa, who is 10, and Aisa, who just turned 20 and is going to the University of Southern California. It's Easter week, and they're going to stay down here for about a week.
How many children do you have altogether?
7.
And what's the age range?
Well, from 40 to 10. And I have 20 grandchildren. Don't ask me to name.
On board the ship, perhaps a microcosm of the old America which Wayne would like to preserve, he directs his family and his crew, and indeed our film crew, with a firm hand.
Now, this is where we generally have lunch. We don't do this for every meal, but we think about it. Ethan, will you say grace?
Lord, we thank you for this food and for letting us be able to come down here and have so much fun, God, because most people can't do it. And we thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name, God. Amen.
Amen. Diggy. Here we go. Roast beef? How about you, Pat? Would you like some?
Wayne is in fact separated from his third wife, Pilar, who's the mother of the 3 youngest children. A crew of 6 run the ship, with a professional captain at the helm.
Skipper?
Yes.
Think we can get this bunch over to Isla Grande and back?
I don't see why not. We only have the one rock we have to be careful of going in.
Yeah, but I mean, we can get back by 5.
Oh, absolutely, yes. No
Okay.
problem.
Take her away.
The apple of the Duke's eye is his youngest daughter, Marissa.
Stop over there. Isla Grande. Isn't that pretty out there?
Yeah. When was the last time you were here?
Oh, I guess when you were about that high. Those white rocks are always a pleasant sight for us aboard the Wild Goose. We've seen them many times, and now in this bicentennial year, it's most important because below those white rocks are the redcoats. Now, the redcoats in this case are lobster. That's where we get a lot of lobster, honey. And that's between Zihuatanejo and Isla Grande, where we're going to go. I love you. Okay.
The Wild Goose is bedecked with patriotic memorabilia. Most telling are the various regimental plaques sent to Wayne from units fighting in Vietnam. They appreciated his support for them during that war. His patriotism has never wavered, but today he's a little disillusioned with modern America.
We're being represented by men who are kowtowing to minorities where they can get votes. And I think it's bad for our country, and I am sad to see minorities make so much of themselves as a hyphenated American. I wish they'd all get to thinking that they're Americans as they should, and as they have luckily been born here and couldn't be better off in any other place. There shouldn't be so much whining and bellyaching.
In the late 60s and early 70s, there was a period of considerable change. Civil rights for blacks, equal rights for women. Has this made America a better place?
I am saddened by the fact that although we were a matriarchy, I think we will not be any longer. I think opening doors and tipping your hat to ladies is probably a thing of the past. The forerunners of the women's liberation of today have taken that feeling away from the average American. man.
But what about the civil rights? I mean, it's necessary.
What about the civil rights?
Well, we have 20 million blacks on this continent.
Right.
It was necessary to extend rights to them that perhaps for the first 199 years were denied them in this free America.
I guess that they've had a pretty tough break, but not quite as bad as you and your do-gooder friends would have them believe. They live as well here as they live in any other country over that 199 years. True, I think they do have a right to more rights, but it isn't a thing where the rest of the country should feel terribly guilty about anything because they have had a better life here and their fathers and mothers than they would have had any place else. And I want to see them have everything. I don't squawk and cry baby and say, geez, I had to go without meals when I was 16 and 17 years old. It's a terrible thing. I don't think that you should look back and whine and bellyache or try to hold somebody else guilty for everything you did.
Despite the ferocity of his views, he must know that his children are growing up in a new and changing and different America. But if ever the future generation need to be reminded of the spirit and values of the men who created their continent, they need only turn to the films of John Wayne. Not just a film star, but a real-life character, played by Marion Morrison from Iowa.
I think Marion Michael Morrison and John Wayne are the same person. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the difference is. I probably am a little more careful in my public image than I would be were I Marion Michael Morrison. But I doubt it. I've been on many an escapade under the name John Wayne that might make Aunt Mame turn up her nose.
What sort of escapades?
Well, I like to handle that who hit John, as you know, and do quite well and quite often. But as long as I do things that do not hurt other people, either physically or their dignity, I will allow them to do it, and I hope and pray that they will give me the same return feeling.
But I don't think it's too much to say that in the eyes of the rest of the world, you represent perhaps the ideal American. Are you aware of this? Can you step outside of yourself and see that?
No, I think I represent, as I said, we're talking about personal identity. I think that a Frenchman looking at me outside of when I play a clodhopper oaf or something, the characteristics of manliness that I try to keep on the screen are the things that every man would want, not just an American.
The day has ended. The Wild Goose reaches her moorings for the night, and John Wayne orders a farewell salute.
Should we give him a little show? You got the sunset gun ready? Fine. Sunset's at 6:42. That's 5 seconds. 4 seconds. 3 seconds. 2 seconds. 1 second. Now! Pick it up! Pick it up! That's fine. That's fine. That's good. We don't have to have the finish if we cut back the minute. Well, another day. And let's hope another dollar.
The Shootist turned out to be one of the most acclaimed films of John Wayne's career. It was also his last. 3 years after his release, he died of cancer, aged 72. Posthumously, he received America's 2 highest civilian honors, the Congressional Gold Medal and the Presidential Medal of Freedom, awarded to formally recognize his status as an iconic American, the like of whom Hollywood is unlikely to produce again.